Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Massimiliano Mascherini, and I am the head of social policy unit at Eurofound. And first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation to contribute to this event on NEETs and young people in Europe. And I'm going to present my presentation on NEETs in Europe and the impact of the pandemic. But first of all, who is Eurofound? Eurofound is an European agency located in Liechtenstein in South Dublin, and we are here in Ireland since 1975. We are a body of the European Union. We have a staff of around 100 members and a little office in Brussels. Our mandate is to investigate working and living conditions in Europe, and we produce data with our European Working Conditions Survey and European Quality of Life Survey, as well as we analyze data and provide the secondary analysis. This is who we are, and on the basis of our work, who are the needs, those young people not in employment, education, and training. Now, why we're talking about needs nowadays? Basically, as a consequence of the European crisis, 2008 to 2013, the issue of youth unemployment arrived at the center of the European policy agenda. It was more or less 2010 when deeply concerned about the risk of the lost generation, researchers and government officials started to try to adopt new ways of estimating the prevalence of labor market vulnerability among young people. And among these new ways, the needs, young people not in employment, education, nor training, was identified as a possible measure to identify these extra vulnerability of youth. Of course, NEETs is not really new, it came out in the United Kingdom at the end of the 80s as a result of the training guarantee, that the disqualified youth age 16 to 18 to receive youth unemployment benefits. And it was started with the research of Howard Williamson and the South Glamorgan University in 1994, where the concept of needs and people who are not in employment, education, and training started to be investigated. Then it was later adopted in Bridging the Gap, in 1999, by the UK government, and was in this context that the acronym NEET emerged. But the definition of needs at the European level, it was agreed in April 2010 by the Employment Committee of the European Commission and especially Needs Indicator Group that agreed on a definition of needs and a methodology for a standardized indicator for measuring the size of the need population among the member states. The implementation of this methodology was then done by Eurostat. And so we have the NEET indicators, the share of young people age with a question mark, because it really depends on the concept of youth in the various member states, but now is age 15 to 29, who, regardless of their educational level, are not in employment, education, and training. So the concept, the indicator of needs is pretty easy. Is the number of young people not in employment, education, and training on the total population of young people. Now, in the policy agenda, NEETs made its debut in 2010, with the Europe EU 2020 agenda and the Youth on the Move initiatives. Then there was a constant crescendo. It appeared with the Youth Opportunity Initiatives and the Youth Employment Package in 2012. But the most important thing that made the NEETs remain in the policy agenda is the 2013 Youth Guarantee. That was the first initiative launched under the Irish presidency to place explicitly the reduction of the needs rates as a policy target. And then from there, it grew, and in 2020, it was confirmed the policy objective to reduce the number of needs also in 2020 reinforced Youth Guarantee. Now, we know who are the needs or how to measure the needs. How many needs we have in Europe? In 2022, we have 11.7% of young people aged 15 to 29 who are not in employment, education, and training. Here, Ireland has a value that is lower than the European Union average, actually, but 11.7% of the youth population. It means 8.7 million of young individuals who are not in employment, education, and training, actually. And in order to visualize 8.7 million, we can imagine that they are the entire population of 6 small medium member states like Malta, Luxembourg, Cyprus, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So it's like having such population of NEETs is like having the population of 6 member states who are not in employment, education, and training. Now, if it is 2022, actually, let's see how the NEETs rate change across time and some particularity of the NEETs population. First of all, of course, I have here the quarterly trend from the first quarter of 2009 to the last quarter of 2022. We see that, of course, with the beginning of the Great Recession, the NEETs rate increased and reached their top in the third quarter of 2013, actually. Then it decreased with the recovery and the new expansionary period. And then we have the jump on the first quarter of 2020 with the COVID-19 crisis. It was a big jump, but it decreased actually quite fast. Overall, what we can see is that males has a lower level of NEETs than female, and this gap it decrease during recessions and increase during expansionary periods. So this is the European Union. If you look at Ireland, we notice the additional volatility of the Irish NEETs rate. As we can see, during the economic crisis of 2013, the NEETs rate in Ireland were higher than the one in the European Union, that it decreased quite considerably during the recovery that in Ireland started earlier, actually, and then it jumped again above the European Union average with the COVID-19 pandemic, for then decreasing at a higher speed than the European Union with the following recovery. Interestingly, the Irish NEETs rate started to increase again in the last 2 quarters of 2022 at a speed that is higher than the one of the other member states. Another particularity of Irish NEETs rate is that males have a higher level of NEETs during recessions, while females have a higher level of NEETs than male during expansionary periods. This is quite interesting because we cannot see this in many member states, actually. Now, we already understand that there were different dynamics between the 2008 recession and the COVID-19 pandemic. But if we compare actually the NEET rate along these 2 periods, so putting in zero the level in the first quarter of 2020 and in the first quarter of 2009, we can see that the COVID-19 pandemic, the impact was very intense because it jumped as a matter of 1 quarter of plus 1.7%, but then it decreased quite quickly, and after 6 quarters, the NEET rates recorded in Europe was lower than the pre-pandemic period. On the other hand, for what concern the Great Recession, the impact increased and took years before it was converging again to the previous level. Now, who are the NEETs actually? Because when we talk about NEETs, we talk about a very heterogeneous population. When I started to work with the NEETs, that was basically in 2010 and 2011, policymakers had in mind that the NEETs were youth disengaged, actually. So when we were talking about NEETs, they were always thinking that they were the disengaged youth, actually. But this is not the case. NEETs are literally only young people that are not in employment, education, and training. So it's a very heterogeneous population. For example, we have conventionally unemployed that can be short or long-term unemployed. We have young mothers that could voluntarily decide to withdraw from labor market and education in order to take care of their own kids, or they are obliged to do that because they cannot afford childcare. Then we have discouraged workers, and then we have a different population that are those who are more privileged, that are holding for an opportunity. So they are not participating in the labor market because they can afford this, and they are holding for an opportunity. But overall, actually, the NEET rate is a mix of vulnerable and non-vulnerable youth that are in a status of non-accumulating human capital through formal channels, and they are more likely to experience future disadvantage or to follow dangerous lifestyles. So, if we talk about the potential risk factors ending on NEETs, actually, we see, for example, that education play an important role both at the individual and at the family levels, and those young people who have a low educational level or come from a family with a low educational level are 2 to 3 times more likely to be NEETs than the other rest of the population. Women are more likely of being NEETs than men, and then those with immigration background or suffering some type of disability has a higher probability of becoming NEETs, as well as those coming from a difficult family environment. However, the heterogeneity of the NEETs emerge also when we consider the average marginal effect of the income on the probability of becoming NEET. As we can see, the probability of becoming NEET is higher for very low income, then it decreases till reaching a certain threshold that is around the upper middle class, and then it increases again for those with a very high level of income. So NEETs is an heterogeneous population, and this has to be considered when considering NEETs for policymaking. In fact, NEETs has a powerful catalytic effect in attracting the attention of public opinions, researchers, and policymakers over the multi-phase nature of young people vulnerabilities. In comparison to youth unemployment, the concept of NEETs has clear advantage to place special populations like young mothers, people with disabilities, at the center of the policy debate, without further marginalizing them under the label of inactive. However, this heterogeneity is the main value added and the main limitation, especially when using the NEETs for policymaking. In fact, putting the reduction of the NEETs rate as a policy target, such as it does the youth guarantee, it is fabulous, but it means to prepare a policy offer to reintegrate all young people in the labor market and in the society. So we need to encompass all the groups included in the NEETs category and not only focus on, for example, the unemployed. So for this reason, in order to understand and to set the reduction of NEETs rate, we need actually to understand the population of NEETs and disaggregate the NEETs category in order to take account for their characteristics. So in order to do that, actually, in order to disentangle the heterogeneity of NEET, actually, we adopted the labor force survey, and we basically we used the European labor force survey in order to identify categories of young people not in employment, education, and training, and to compare member states along these characteristics. In particular, actually, due to the characteristic of the labor force survey, we identified 7 categories. First of all, the long and the short-term unemployed, then those who are unavailable for work, as those with illness or disability, or those with family responsibilities, the discouraged workers, those who are NEETs for other reasons, that there is a mix often of most disadvantaged and most vulnerable, and then those who are re-entrants, they are in transition from the NEETs and a new work, a new contract, a new study, actually. So the transition period is the least vulnerable. So on this regard, actually, we could compare how the population of NEETs changed between 2013, 2019, and 2020. So basically, what we have that in 2013, actually, the category that were most common among the needs were those were needs due to the labor market reasons. So basically, short and long-term unemployed. They were followed then by those were needs for family responsibilities. Lower, actually, is the share of the other groups. And this was the height of the economic crisis. In 2019, actually, at the height of the previous expansionary period, what we see is that a reduction on all the categories that are labor market driven, like short-term and long-term unemployed, and discouraged workers, who actually was halved. It is interesting to see that anyway those with the family responsibilities remained more or less the same, as well as more or less all the other categories. What we can see in 2020 with the first year of the pandemic, we saw actually that there is an immediate increase of labor market related categories like the short-term unemployed as well as the discouraged workers. Is a clear effect of the non-pharmaceutical intervention put in place in order to control the pandemic that caused the closure of retail and various sectors. Interesting again is anyway the decrease of the category for family care and family responsibilities. This is quite interesting because this share was more or less constant across time, and probably is due to the new formal works that may allow actually to combine working from home and taking care of the families. Now, there is a huge country heterogeneity actually in the characteristics of needs, and categorizing needs according to this categorization actually reveals similarities and differences of member states, as well as help to identify the more immediate chapter of intervention if you want to reintegrate needs into the labor market and in the society. I will compare actually two countries, and I hope that you can see that is actually Ireland and Italy, my own country. What we can see actually is that in Ireland, almost 20% of needs are short-term unemployed or are needs due to care, family and care responsibilities, actually. Very low, there is a high level of needs that are needs due to illness and disability. And then very small, actually, is the share of those who are long-term unemployed or discouraged workers. Italy is very different. We can see that, for example, the share of needs that are needs due to family and family responsibilities is lower than in Ireland. But the share of needs who are needs due to long-term unemployed and the discouraged workers are almost 3 times the share of Ireland. You can compare different member states and you will find actually many surprises and many differences across member states, indicating actually that every member state has to follow their own trajectory in order to reintegrate needs into the labor market. Now, the cost of needs, and then I'm going to conclude actually. Spending protracted time outside the labor market and education may lead to a wide range of negative social conditions, actually, future poor employment participation, exclusion, disengagement, and the risk of following the dangerous lifestyle. So these outcomes all have a cost attached to them, and therefore being needs is not just a problem for the individual, but also for the society and the economy as a whole. So there is an economic and there is a social cost. At Eurofound, we perform a costing exercise on the loss for the European Union economies due to the inability of integrating young needs into the labor market. Basically, we applied the propensity score matching And we identified using USILC the foregone earnings and unpaid taxes due to the NEET status, as well as the excess of welfare transfer that the NEETs are more likely to receive. According to our exercises, the loss in 2021 of having 12% of young people who are NEETs were around 141 billions of euro, around 1% of the European Union GDP. If we extend the calculation along the last 10 years, we can conclude that more than 1.6 trillion of euros has been lost for our inaction of including young people into the labor market. It is a huge number driven by the missing productivity and the welfare loss, and is just a conservative estimation because it does not take into account of the missing talent and the missing opportunity for human capital development. If we wanted to have a geographical composition of Europe in terms of cost of NEETs as share of GDP, we can see that this cost is minimal in Luxembourg, Netherlands, Sweden, and also Ireland, 0.3% of GDP, but is quite considerable for Poland, Greece, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Romania, where the cost is above 2% of GDP, reaching almost 4% in Bulgaria and in Romania. I'm going to conclude actually talking a little bit about the social cost of NEETs. There were concerns about the disaffection of NEETs. Are NEETs likely to opt out from participation to democratic and civil society engagement of our society? In order to do that, actually, we investigated the participation and interest in politics, trust, and social participation. What we can see is that young people in general scored lower compared to other categories in several of the dimensions considered, revealing a lower participation to the society, to the political life of the society. At the European Union level, NEETs, and in particular those who are unemployed, scored even lower in all the dimensions considered, from participation to trust. So can we conclude that the NEETs are opting out from our societies, actually? Well, the answer is not so easy because we found different behaviors in different clusters of countries. So more research is needed in this sense, but what we found was three main clusters. And going along the Hirschman framework of exit, voice, and loyalty, you will see that NEETs didn't have a significant different effect than the rest of young people in these indicators for Scandinavian countries, maybe due to their welfare system. On the other hand, countries across West and East Europe, actually we had exits. So those who are NEETs are considerably less likely to participate in the society. And on the other hand, actually, in South European countries, we have voice. Those who are NEETs, actually, and in particular those who are unemployed, are more likely to be politically active than the rest of the young people population. These can be due also by the size of the cohort of NEETs in these countries, that is huge, actually. For Italy, it's almost the 20% of young people, and therefore the selection processes in ending up NEETs actually include also those with a higher level of education and therefore ready to raise their voice for their rights of entering into the labor market with a stable foot. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the conclusions. The future of Europe depends upon the future of its young population. While the youth was the most affected population by the COVID-19, actually, in several dimensions, its effect has been quickly absorbed. This is pretty different from what happened for 2018, from 2008-2013 crisis. NEETs entered quickly at the center of the policy debate, actually, and due to this cathartic effect of attracting the interest of public opinion. The concept of being NEETs actually are dramatic for the individual and the society as a whole, and therefore member states and the European Union are right to set the target to reduce NEETs. However, policy action needs to be tailored for the characteristics of each subgroup, and therefore each member state has to adapt its own strategy on the basis of the characteristics of the NEETs population. This is my presentation. Thanks a lot for your attention, and for any question, you can just write me at my email address, who is mam@eurofound.europe.eu. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of the conference.